Hello and welcome to Mike's Minty Music for today. Today we review the soundtrack for the 1992 Game Boy game Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins, composed by Kazumi Totaka and available through the Nintendo Music app. Totaka also worked on Super Mario Land 1 as a composer, although for this one he is credited as the sole composer, where Super Mario Land 1 had multiple people credited. This is the track listing. 35 tracks, comes in at 31 minutes, which is pretty good for a soundtrack like this. Most of the songs are less than a minute a piece, which is pretty nice. And these are the tracks I added to my playlist, 11 out of 35, so less than a third here. This soundtrack is alright, but it's not great. Most of the main level BGMs are all the same song, just remixed and done with sort of different production, different instruments. It's not a bad sort of track, but it isn't incredible, and some of the versions are a lot better than others, like the boss BGM. The first half of the soundtrack is very meh. It takes a while to really get going, and that boss music might be the only good track on that side, unfortunately. The second half is a little more solid. The Macro Zone and Space Zone tracks are generally pretty decent, in my opinion. Sort of the whole suite of tracks from those areas. Unfortunately, the final boss, who is Wario in this game, his music wasn't particularly outstanding, although the final credits track does manage to pull it back and end the album well. The main issue with this album is that it specifically doesn't use any of the classic Mario songs written by Koji Kondo. I can understand wanting to try and stand out musically and make something new, but you have to at least justify it by writing stuff that is as good as the original or better, or at least making a solid attempt to do something out of the ordinary and interesting, and this soundtrack really doesn't do any of that. Still, it's not absolutely terrible to listen to, and relatively short, all things considered. The Game Boy has a good sound chip, so it's mildly pleasant to listen to, all things considered. My favorite track here is definitely Star Course Space Zone, which is one of the few tracks that isn't just the main theme redone. And also, for some reason, it's a full 4 minutes instead of just a minute or so, as with most of the other tracks. There's clearly some variation throughout the 4 minutes, I guess, so yeah. Not an incredible track overall, but certainly the best one here in this environment. I rank this soundtrack 14th out of the 15 Mario soundtracks I've listened to so far. This is definitely one of the worst ones. It's marginally better than the original Mario Bros., which basically isn't a full soundtrack at all. But other than that, this is definitely one of the most meh Mario soundtracks. Super Mario Bros. 2 at least manages to lean on the classic Koji Kondo stuff, although they don't do anything interesting with it. And the original Super Mario Land has a good amount of interesting stuff, although it didn't end up coming together very well. But even those two are still better than Super Mario Land 2. Unsurprisingly, this soundtrack does not take my top spot from 1992. That stays with Kirby's Dream Land, which is a great soundtrack, and Super Mario Land 2 doesn't compete at all, really. Kirby's Dream Land is also my favorite album from 1992 overall, so Super Mario Land 2 doesn't compete for that either, obviously. So, thank you for watching. Next up will be AC/DC's first album, High Voltage, released in 1975 in Australia. I'm excited to get into their albums, so stay tuned for that, and as always, stay minty.